And we are live yet. Welcome to Piano Academy. I have the pleasure today to have here with me Dimitar Pentchev, who is a composer, a pianist, a writer, producer, a multimedia artist. And he's a friend of mine. So let's welcome Dimitar after the branding.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you for having me. I'm very, I'm honored to be here, and as always, pleasure talking to you about music and about piano, about everything.
Awesome. So, tell me a little bit about your beginnings. You know, how did you start to really kind of play the piano and being music?
I started playing the piano a little bit by accident. I could read and write before I went to first grade in school.
Yes.
I was 5.5, 6 years. At that time, we went to school at 7 years old, first grade. I was about 5.5 when I could read and write quite fluently. Yeah. And my mother, who was a teacher, said to my dad, he's going to be bored at school. So he's going to behave badly or bother the teachers and the other classmates. So they said, okay, we need to make him busy with something else. Right. And they hesitated between learning a foreign language or music. And
which you did anyway, right?
Yeah, I did anyway. But at that time, it wasn't that common to do many different languages. But they took me to a local, like a little music studio, and they were the director of the studio auditioned me. So basically, he asked me to sing a couple of little songs, clap back, the usual things that we do for ear training. And I apparently did good. So he said, "Let's sign him up for a piano, and we'll see what happens." And that was like just by accident. Basically, my future life was decided, but I never regretted it. I loved it. I had throughout the years, I've had some amazing teachers, which is probably the most important thing to make you keep up with music, even if you're not professional. Teachers are very important, and that's how I started. Now, the good thing about the school was that it was financed by the government, so we didn't pay any tuition.
Right.
So it was called School for Talented Kids or something like that. And anybody could audition, but if they accept you, your parents didn't pay any tuition, and the teachers were very good. They weren't like teachers for free. They were really good, and I made some great progress for the first 3-4 years, and then after that we had these local, like regional competitions for kids. Basically, kids from the region play different pieces, and we get like first prize, second prize, third prize. It wasn't super competitive, but the thing is that teachers from the closest state music school came to those to kind of look for future students, and these music schools were basically high schools for kids who play piano or play other instrument. And the curriculum of the school is basically whatever everybody else is studying, like high school diploma, plus very intensive music subjects, like
like the conservatory in Italy.
Yes, you study harmony, you study counterpoint, you study history of music, you do chamber music once a week. You have 2 lessons, 1 hour each every week with your main teacher, and that's on top of all the other academic stuff.
And but on top of the high school.
Yeah, exactly. But that was very good because it gives you also. It was in a bigger town with better concerts. You can go to, the students had access to concerts for free and stuff like that.
We are talking about Bulgaria, right?
Yeah, Bulgaria. Yes, Bulgaria. And so I was around grade 4 or 5. I transferred to one of those teachers at the nearest town, and she was an amazing teacher. She passed away a couple of years ago. She was my best teacher ever. I stayed with her for over 10 years, 10, 12 years. And I can say that almost everything I know about piano and music, the most important things I learned from her. She was both a pupil of the Russian piano school. She went to a specialization in Moscow, in the Moscow Conservatory, with a famous teacher. I can't remember the name. And then she also went to Italy and specialized in Santa Cecilia as well for a year. I think she studied with Aldo Ciccolini or somebody like that. Anyway. And she had from both. They're not so much different, but still, she could pick things from both schools. Western European.
I think the Russian Conservatory originated from Italian pianists going there and
I think Italian and French. A lot of it, but basically a lot of it from Italian. Yes, because it was. But they went in a different direction slightly in the 20th century. But anyway, it was. She was telling me a lot of stories about different approaches to music and stuff like that. She was also she was also somebody who could you could talk about theater, art, contemporary art. She was she had a very she had a great taste. Basically, she taught me how to have taste, and that's something that very few people in your life can teach you.
Right.
And it's very valuable.
I don't know if you've read the book by Neuhaus, The Art of Playing Piano.
Yes.
Yeah. So he talks about how he inspired his students with poetry and art.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. She could quote stuff. She spoke many languages. The other good thing about her was that I have to tell her name. I have to say her name. Her name was Julia Girginova, and she also was a performer. Right. She had an active concert career, and that was also very valuable. Not many teachers at that time were, it's hard to find a teacher that's both a performer and a good teacher. And I mean, what can I say? She was like a second mother to me. Basically, she made me the part of me that's a musician and also a person who appreciates art. She made that. She kind of shaped that, and I'm extremely grateful. Now I have to jump a bit, but one of my students last year I instituted a scholarship in her name, and one of my students is the first recipient of this scholarship, which basically includes, it's about $3,500, includes lessons for a year and plus the books included with that.
That's
so
beautiful.
Hopefully I can make it a bit more accessible to other people and make add more value to it. But it's just a start. It's a start at the beginning.
You gave the first concert when you were 12, right?
Yes.
I read it. What was the program?
I have it somewhere. It's tucked away in a small cardboard, like a cardboard thing. I think I played a Haydn sonata, not the whole sonata. I think it might have been one of the bigger ones. So I played the first movement. I played some Schumann pieces. I played some. I think one of the Tchaikovsky seasons. May. I think it's the White Nights one. I played a couple of contemporary Bulgarian pieces, so small ones. And I don't remember much, but I remember that it was a little bit under an hour. So it's about 55 minutes of music, which at 12 is quite a bit.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot, and everything by memory. And it was in a big hall. The piano was upright piano, but it was in a big hall in my native town in Bulgaria. And because was the first concert. My parents invited all the relatives, the whole town. So it's quite a bit of audience, and I was very, very nervous because I've never done anything like that before. And 12 is just about at the time where you start to worry when you perform, right?
I think you will never stop being nervous, right?
I think younger students are better with the nerves, right? They go and they play, but as you get around the teenage years, you start to freeze. And it went really well. My teacher was never fully happy with my performance. I remember after every recital, every year, she would sit down with me with all the books and just go through every piece and do a full analysis of what I did right, what I forgot. She would say, "Oh, remember we talked about that. Why didn't you do that?" And it was analysis page by page. That was my well done after the concert. And so we did this analysis, and she asked me, "Okay, so what was the best part of the concert?" And my parents were there and other people, and I said the best part was when I got the flowers at the end. And they started laughing, and then started repeating that for years and years. So that's how it started. And I would do usually one, sometimes two recitals. That means two different programs a year, and play them in different places around in the region, basically. And that's how she taught me to perform. And with so she taught me. I can see now that she taught me at that age that playing in a concert wasn't the end of a piece, of the life of the piece. Right? It was just a stage. So you learn something very, very well. She also taught me to leave it aside for a bit, then come back to it later, and always gets better. Right. And then many people think, oh, you played in one concert, public performance, that's it. But then you discover that if you keep practicing it, you discover new things, right, after that. Yeah. And then she would do something like that with me. And that's how we started.
Awesome. So you composed too, right?
Yes.
And how did you start composing then?
Again, by accident. Absolutely by accident. I was already at the music academy in Sofia, Bulgaria, studying for my master's in piano performance and accompaniment. And one day I met a friend of mine on the street. There is a street in Sofia which is like the equivalent of Broadway. Lots of the theaters are on that street, on one street. And I met this friend of mine. We were together in the army. And then later we lost touch a little bit. And 5, 7, 10 years later, I meet him on that street. He was with a worried look. And I said, what are you doing? Where are you hurrying? What's happening? What's the problem? And he said, I'm about to, and he's an artist. He's a painter, but it turns out he studied to be a theater director. And he said, I'm about to direct my first professional play, first professional production. And I don't have a composer. I've asked people that I like, but they're too expensive for me. I've asked other people that want to do it. I don't like or I don't know them. And I said, I'm going to write music for you, for your play. And I've never done anything like that before. I mean, I composed like children things when I was 10, but that was like 20 years before, right? So I said, I'm going to write music for you. And he said, oh, okay, well, let's see. I'm going to talk to the manager of the theater, and we'll see if he agrees. And he said yes, and I went and I started writing. I have to say that I love theater. I've loved theater since I was a very little kid. My parents started taking me to the theater when I was 2.5 years old. Wow. And I would sit through a whole performance, 2-3 hours like that, and quiet, not make any problems. So I had like a theater, in
the feeling
in the blood a little bit. Yes, but composing for theater, I never I've never even contemplated that I would have a chance to do that. So the first
it was very, very brave of you to just like go there.
Yes, and brave of him to say, okay, you can try it. Obviously, well, he had professional actors and everything. So even if the music didn't turn out okay, he would be okay. But for me, it was, if it doesn't turn out good, it was like, first, I never thought it's not going to turn out good. I thought it's going to be okay. But then it turned out that I had to write. We decided to have a live brass band on stage. It's like 12 people all playing brass instruments. And if you know from music theory that almost all of them transpose. And that was a baptism by fire, because it's one thing to write for a piano, which and you can play it. You can write for an instrument that and it's completely other to write for instruments that I haven't even seen. I went to the musicians when I went. It was another city. I went to the musicians to talk to them, and they told me, "Oh, my instrument plays from here to here. This is good." And this was like 5 minutes, and I was like, "Oh, taking notes." And it was one of those. If you know Goran Bregovic, okay, that's okay. It's a Balkan brass band. They play like a folk kind of music. Anyway, they had some unusual instruments, but all of them transposed. So I had to write a score, handwrite. We didn't have computers then. I have to handwrite the score and then transpose each part. I wrote it in transposed score, and then I had to transpose the part for each instrument by hand. So I wrote like 12 parts. The music turned out to be about 40 minutes in total. So it was like it's a big piece of music, 40 minutes for 12 instruments and part for each of them, handwriting and transposing. And I was very careful not to make mistakes, because when you work with musicians, you don't know. If you make a mistake, they think, oh, what kind of composer is that? He doesn't know what he's doing. So I was very careful not to make mistakes. And at first, when I went with the music to them, they couldn't read it at first. Right, sight read it. It was a bit harder, and it didn't sound good. It sounded, they weren't together. They didn't count. I didn't, tell them all the. So it sounded. The first rehearsal started a little bit, and they were looking at me like, "Who's that guy? What does he think he does?" And I wasn't even sure that's going to match. In my head, it matches, but. And then when they started getting it and they started putting it together, it sounded amazing. Okay, so I got a nomination for the most prestigious theater award in Bulgaria with that first project, and then they say that the rest is history. I started writing concert music, a bit later, even later than that, when I went to the United States to do my master's in piano. I started.
Right?
In
Dallas. Sorry.
Yeah. And I started. I had the first formal composition lessons with a professor there. Robert Frank is his name, a great guy and composer, and he taught me a lot of things. Also, I had again a very great luck with the teacher. With the first composition teacher, it was really good.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So that's how I started writing by accident, but it turned out that it was successful.
But you're a multimedia artist, right?
Yes, that come again later, but that's something that I developed over the years. I've always been interested in writing stuff, written poetry, some short stories. I even had the bravery to send some short stories that I wrote many years ago, to send them to one of the most famous Bulgarian poets. And I sent it to him and waited for like 6 months.
Wow.
And then I called him and said, did you receive my short stories? And that's my name. And he said, okay, I think I remember. And then he quoted one of the plots of one of the stories.
Wow.
I said, that's me. And he remembered 6 months later. And I was like, and he said, you should write more. Don't worry. you can do it. And that was a big boost. So that writing, of course, it's very hard when you go to a different country and you have to do it in different language. It takes time to. I'm still not sure that I'm that good in English, but I'm trying to. Sometimes I write in Bulgarian and translate it. Sometimes I write straight in English, and just try to compare the two and see. That's still, the jury is still out on that one.
I still don't know what kind of language I speak better, because even Italian is getting a little bit shaky.
So that's where it starts to go branch out from the music. Then while I was living in England, I started doing a bit of photography. That added a bit of image, just manipulating photos and stuff like that. And then I started interested more in video and how to match. Basically, that's been my interest in the recent years. How to match all those elements, music, text. Maybe I'm very interested in the music of the language, music of the speech. I use sometimes music of recorded voices, and use the music of the language to extract notes, extract ideas for a composition. One of my projects right now is based on that. And then also images and video, and how to blend all of that so none of the elements overpowers the others. That's the most difficult thing that to do with multimedia
within all those arts.
Because very often you will see people, it's a kind of trendy right now to do multimedia. So you'll see people play a concert, just a normal composition that's normally played without visuals, and then they just tack some visuals, something that basically distracts you from the music, because it doesn't have a deep connection. It's not that well thought out, and it just adds a little bit. Maybe they think they add interest, but it just it doesn't work. On the other hand, you can see sometimes people who are better at the visual, they do amazing visuals, and then they put some music that sounds like accompaniment, like a movie, basically. But that's not what I'm after. I'm not after a movie. I would like to have interaction, some kind of interaction between the visual and the music. So, in other words, if you imagine that the music is one character and the visual is another, they recognize each other, right? It's not like, oh, one of them is stuck on the other, or and the other is dragging it, right? No, they are like it's like a dialogue. I would like to do that. There is a composer which I like very much. He's a Dutch composer called Michel van der Aa, and he has degrees both in music and in film directing, in film. So he does these combinations of video and music, which are very, very successful, but so difficult to do. I did a piece that was called Gleams in Toronto, which had visuals. It had live piano played, some pre-recorded sounds which were manipulated. It had 2 actors. It had a dancer, and all of those elements we managed to do in a way that not all the time balanced, but in many places they were perfectly balanced, and it was a good learning moment for me to figure out how some tricks and some ways to do that. So that has been my interest recently. That's why I put multimedia artist on my, or interdisciplinary artist in my designation, because I like to do all those things. If we can come back to my first teacher, to Julia, who said, one of the last meetings I had with her, I complained that sometimes I write music and people it's hard to find people to play it. And she said, well, you need to do something that's that you compose it, you create it, you can write, you can play, and you can also perform it. So do something that you can do, and then you can't complain that nobody will perform it, but you can just do it yourself. And that's how many years before, again, she influenced me in that direction. You can tell that I was listening to her very carefully.
Yeah. So that was very wise, because basically when we do something, right, we do it by ourselves, we do it for the fun of doing that because we are artists and not.
And you know best what you want, so you can't complain first. And also it's very gratifying to do something yourself, and then maybe doing that you can attract other people to your
music,
to your search, to your artistic thing, and then they could later develop interest in that.
I have a question. It's just more curiosity, because I was reading something the other day about how composers should compose, or how they are supposed to compose. Do you start from the structure? Do you structure the piece first, or do you write the different sections and then try to find a structure? How do you start?
Well, I don't think I use one approach. It depends on the composition. I rarely start with the structure, rarely, unless somebody comes to me and says, okay, you need to write me a theme and variations, right? Or a piece that will include that and that and that, right? So for example, if you write music for theater, that has structure, because this is this scene and this scene here. But when I compose music, like a piece for like a chamber piece or something like that, I start with an idea, and I usually start with improvising on the piano. And during that improvisation, like many hours, you can play for 2 hours. And if at the end of those 2 hours, you have one idea that kind of sticks and kind of comes back, you come back to it because you like it, that becomes like not a theme, but maybe harmonic succession. Like I end up with a succession of 7, 8, 10 chords. And then based on those chords, I start to come up with a melody. Or sometimes I will compose a melody, which many contemporary composers think it's a word that you shouldn't use. But I like to use it. I like melodies. And if I can come up with something, I do it. To me, composing is a lot like directing a play, because I think of the musicians or the instruments as different characters. And they interact, they have dialogue, they have conflict that gets resolved, or it doesn't get resolved, or drama. And it has a narrative, but I have to say that the narrative is not always like a old-fashioned narrative where you have beginning, a conflict resolution.
Middle, and
Sometimes you could have like a stream of consciousness narrative, right? You can have something, or you could have collage, and still the collage have some logic. So it has some logic, but it's not always, it shouldn't be straight. It shouldn't be old-fashioned. And I come up with an idea, and then I develop this idea. Depends on how many instruments I have, for example, I'll give you an example. The latest project, one of the latest projects I do is, as I said, based on recording speech. I wrote this poem just by accident. I wrote this poem about refugees. It's a 1-page poem. And I said to myself, okay, so what do I do with this? I'm not going to write like a book dedicated on that subject, right? Or it's going to be just like a single thing. So I translated it into, I wrote it originally in English, and then I decided, okay, let's translate it into different languages, and then ask people to record. So I translated it into Arabic, what I have quite a few. German, I have Japanese, I have Chinese, Mandarin translation, and each recording sounds different. The intonation is different. I don't speak the languages, but I can. But the text is the same, right? And each recording sounds different. So I put these recordings, the audio recordings, in my software, and I extract what's called MIDI information, which is basically notation.
Yeah.
And then I put I assign a different like an instrument to play that, and the instrument matches the speaking. Like I speak now. Imagine you have an instrument that goes right, and this becomes like a melody, and then based on that, I create a bigger piece. Now imagine the text, the poem finishes, the text fades, and you're left with just the music, and you still hear that relationship to the speech, but now it starts developing more as a musical piece.
That's awesome.
And my idea is to have these pieces. They're going to be, most of them are going to be for solo instruments, and to have a performance of those, like a person speaking the poem live, and next to him like a trumpet player, and the trumpet player plays with the poem together, and then becomes like a solo trumpet piece, and at the end they maybe do the poem again together or something like that, or a string quartet, or so that's one way of it's kind of a very it's winding way to do it, but it gives me the interesting thing is that it's one poem and it sounds completely different on every language. So I end up with 10, 12, 15 compositions based on the same poem, the same idea, but I can give them to different instruments and they will sound different.
That's beautiful. So now you teach piano as well, right? Near Toronto. Yeah. And
that's a big part of my artistic
You're currently teaching online, right?
Yes.
So anybody in the world watching this video might ask you for lessons.
Oh yes, definitely. Yeah, of course.
So you're an amazing pianist, but also a very, very good piano teacher. I remember when my students had the evaluations with you, your comments were always really on point, right? For them, and they use them. So what are the different approaches that you use with the different students?
One of the things that we do in our studio is, first of all, we have this unique program, which is called Masterclass Program. And it has, we have once a month, at the end of the month, we have a masterclass. It's with me. So it's like the traditional masterclass format, but they have it every month. So when we had lessons in person, it was just me and the students, no parents. Right. So that's the least amount of pressure that you have for the students. Almost no pressure. They just play for their peers, and for me, it's a little bit more formal though than a lesson. So it is a performance, but we also say that you can play something that you're working on. You don't have to play a finished piece. So they all come. Right now we do it online, but it's the same thing. They all come and play their pieces, and I give them comments, and I also ask them to comment on each other's performance. So the students are sitting, and I ask them, okay, so how was that? What did you think of the dynamics? What do you think of? And we have 5, 6, 7 years old students, 10 years old, and they all learn to not only to play, but to listen.
Yeah.
Also, they learn to give each other feedback without being mean, which is something very rare in this internet day and age. They learn to be nice to each other, even if sometimes they criticize. They say, okay, well, he made a mistake here, but he'll practice and he'll fix it, right? Something like that. So they always give you something positive, like they should be. So I'm very proud of them. And also if they have to perform somewhere or do a presentation, not only perform, but a presentation in school or something like that, they have no problem with that because they've done it so many times. So that's one of the approaches that we have. Also makes them practice better because they have I tell them that they could do a piece that they're still learning, like make mistakes and stuff.
Yeah.
But they like when they play better, when they like when they play without mistakes. So they try to learn it every month to learn. Imagine these are 7, 8, 9, 10 years old students. They play a different piece to a higher standard every month.
Yeah.
So that means they work on 3, 4 pieces, and each month we push one to get better, perform it, then maybe finish it or continue working on it. Then the next month we do another one.
Yeah.
And they have we have 10 master classes a year. 2 of them are recitals, so 8 of them. So they basically have at least 8, 9 pieces that they finish to a higher standard every year.
Yeah,
which is very good.
I had a similar experience in Italy when I was after my conservatory, after the academy. I don't know if you know or if you knew Luigi Mostacci. He was the artistic director of the international competition in Senigallia. But
I know the competition. I don't know the name, but I'm very familiar with the competition.
The one who started. But so he organized these master classes every month. We had to play for a different pianist. So he had the concert season going on, and every month he had a pianist coming from abroad, and we had to play for this person. I could play for Oksana Yablonskaya, and for Delevine, and all different pianists from all over the world. It was amazing, but there was a lot of pressure to us.
Yes, well, that's a different level. That's slightly different level because it's often, and it's the pianists are it's more demanding. It seems like more demanding. Yeah. Yes. Mine is more oriented to make them more comfortable to perform, to make less pressure. And obviously, if they have a competition or exam, they get worried a bit more. But still, I think the master classes that we do lower the pressure quite a bit. Apart from that, I use the RCM curriculum, Royal Conservatory of Music curriculum of Canada, but it's a very standard curriculum. Mostly, it's divided into periods. Baroque. You play Baroque piece, you play a classical sonatina, then you play a more contemporary piece, Romantic or 20th century. It's a standard on, if you go to other systems, it's the same thing, just slightly different pieces, but it's the same thing. That's why I use it, because it's a good, I'm not very fond of students taking many exams or many competitions. I don't like competitions very much, but the curriculum is very good, and I use it. And I work on with every student. We talked about a little bit about that before the show. I work on technique quite a bit, because if you don't, if you can't skate, you're not going to be able to do a triple axel, right? You can't just go and do a triple axel without having put the skates even once. So you need to have the technique, otherwise you hit your head in the wall. I always try to spark the imagination of the students. We always talk about what is the piece about. I often ask my students to write stories about. If a piece is not very clear what it's about, some titles are very clear, right? But sometimes you have, like a sonatina, and you see this piece, and I ask them, imagine what is going on here. What is it joyful but fast, or joyful but not so fast? Is it sunny day? Is it spring, or what's the sun? Is it the summer sun, or is it it's I try to make it more like spark their imagination to think about, to connect the music with some image or some story. And that makes them play play with more input from them. Right. Usually, very often, that's okay. Students imitate the teacher, and that's how you learn. Basically, you have to imitate your teacher a bit. But for example, we have very often master classes where 2 and sometimes 3 students play the same piece in the same master class, and I tell them that's good, because you can hear And it's true. Every student plays it differently, different tempo, different dynamics. I don't teach the same way every piece. I let the students do a little bit more work, and they could come up with stuff as well. And they play, and they see that you can play one piece in 3 different ways and still make it convincing, and still be proud that you can say, I've learned it, right? Whatever that means. You can say, I know how to play this piece, and another person plays it slightly slower, and I tell them, okay, so that's slightly slower. It changes the character of the piece a little bit, but it doesn't make it worse or better. Right? So it's a matter of taste. So you teach them taste in this way.
Right.
How to. So that's, I don't know if that answers your question.
I know that your son plays the violin, right?
Yes.
And I know that he started with the Suzuki method, like my kids as well.
Yes.
And I'm Suzuki trained as well as a teacher. What are your thoughts about the Suzuki method?
I think the Suzuki method is it's a wonderful thing. That's the first thing that we need to say. It's a wonderful thing. It is very for violin and for string instruments. I think, I'm not sure about piano. I'm not so familiar with the way it's taught. I've seen books, but I'm not so familiar.
The same too. I mean, I have all 5 levels of training, right? And I was training to become an instructor for the teaching trainings in Europe. But after how many years? Almost 20 years that I'm teaching with the Suzuki method, I started taking some steps back for the piano. For violin is amazing because you add one small technical thing at a time.
And also the great thing is that the group playing.
Yes.
They get in groups and they play together, which is the earliest. I mean, you can see children 5 years old and they're playing with 20 other people, like a small orchestra, and they're doing like orchestral work or chamber music. And that's amazing. That gives them confidence, because even if they play slightly out of tune, the other people around them play more in tune, and so they learn that way as well. Very, very important for confidence, for learning how to listen to other people when you play. Piano is more individual instrument. We are damaged a bit because we sit in a room and we don't listen to other people play much at the same time, right? We listen to recordings, but that's different. We don't use. It would be different if we taught our students to do accompaniment from the very beginning, right? Like to get together with other students and with other instruments and do accompaniment. But we don't teach them that because they are not proficient enough. So for piano, the good thing is Suzuki relies a lot on ear. That is good, but it shouldn't be it should be balanced between ear training and reading music, because piano is complex to read, right? It's probably the most complex instrument to read on the page, because it's 2 staves, sometimes 3. You read pedal, you read fingers, you read lots of stuff, and we need to teach them all those skills at the same time. I'm not sure if the Suzuki originally was intended for violin, for string instruments, and I think it works for the first 3, 4, 5 years when they start. It works amazing for them. I'm not sure about.
It is a little bit different for piano, because I mean we have so many different things that we play with both hands, and then 88 keys that you can play with both hands. So it's not limited like the violin or other instruments. So it's a bit different. Now, how do you structure your lesson when you teach it? So do you follow a certain structure, or?
Yes. Well, generally, I found that I follow some structure without so much thinking about it. But it's kind of I've come to that structure throughout the years. So I've tried different things, see what works. Basically, we spend the first small percentage of the lesson on scales, not only scales but technical exercises, warming up. So when I say exercises, I use very limited amount of. I use only selected things. I use scales, of course, because you can you're not worried about playing a wrong note in a scale. So you can assign more musical tasks to a scale. You can tell them, or make a crescendo up and then make diminuendo down, right? Or play staccato, play 3 notes staccato, play 3 notes legato. This is like brain teasers. They need to know the scale well, and they kind of apply different techniques to it, basically. And also the system of the RCM has different scales for each level. So we go through those as well, but it's really limited. It's like 5 minutes. I also use some exercises that I've done myself, like 5-finger position exercises, which for very beginners, for complete beginners, which help them get familiar with a bit more muscle memory and familiar with the geography of the instrument. So basically, I do a major pattern exercise starting from C, from D, from E, from F, or all the white keys.
Yes.
And then I do, and then I come up with different exercises. For example, play every second note louder and the others softer, or something like that, or long short. There's patterns, again based on those majors. So they get used to the beginning of the scale. I also teach them how to play the basic chords like C major, D major, E major, F major, right? I also use one other thing that I use is a series called Dozen a Day. They're
for technical exercise.
100 years ago, but many of them have incorporated musicality in them, like phrasing and relaxing hands and stuff like that, which is very useful to me. So that's the beginning of the lesson. Then they usually have assigned 2 or 3 pieces, depending. If you have a half an hour lesson, they usually have at least 2 pieces assigned, and they play them to me, and then we work on them. So I give them a chance to perform the piece. In other words, to show me what they've done throughout the week. So it's like their chance to perform from play through. Although I tell them playing through is not practicing. Then we start working on bits and pieces, and separately talk about dynamics. The idea is to make it sound more interesting, more artistic, more unique, so they can enjoy it. Because I tell them playing the right notes is just 50% of the job.
Right. Yes.
Then the real work starts after that. What do you make with that? How do you make it? What is the piece about? Why do we get softer here? Why don't we get softer there? And things like that. And this I also give them sometimes chance to write their own dynamics. And you have to see how when they write their own dynamics, they follow them much better than any of the dynamics you told them to do. Because it's theirs. It's theirs.
Yes.
They might be. Sometimes I leave them to write like. Sometimes it's silly, right? They play suddenly loud or suddenly soft. That's okay, but they follow so carefully because they came up with that, and so they want to show off. So that's what I do with them. So then, if we finish one piece, I give them a new piece. Then we sight read through every new piece. If we have time, I try to make time to sight read it in the lesson before we finish, so they know how to practice. I very rarely tell them. Maybe only the more advanced students. I tell them, okay, look at this at home later. But most, I point attention to this thing
certain
here.
Things.
Certain things. Then we do at the end we do some sight reading, some ear training, like in intervals, or maybe lots of sight reading. I asked them to do lots of sight reading because that's something that you could teach yourself. It's not a talent, right? It's not talent that you have or don't. You can teach yourself to be a good sight reader. And I've often in the past I've asked myself, what is the ultimate goal when you teach somebody piano? And if not piano, but any instrument. What is the ultimate goal? And my ultimate goal is for them to be one day self-sufficient.
Yes.
So they can open a piece and play and come up with dynamics and phrasing and style, know about the style, and learn it up to a certain point themselves.
Right. I always tell to my students that the piano lesson has many sub-subjects. You have
Yes.
that subject, the scales, the technical exercises, and the sight reading, and the reading, and the ear training, and the music theory, and the pieces. And then within the pieces, you might have, the Baroque pieces, which are different than the Romantic pieces, which are different than the classical pieces, and or the contemporary pieces. And then we improvise, or kind of we learn how to maybe compose something, by ourselves. So all those things are mostly in 30, 45 minutes, right? So there are all those small subjects that then, they need to be practiced at home eventually. So I usually tell them, it's not that you only have the piece to play. You only have all those things that you have to practice. How do you suggest them to practice? Because that's a question that they always ask me, right? Or how do you practice piano? How can we practice piano better?
Well, I tell them what we do in the lesson is that's how you practice. And if they have specific questions about certain spots, I can come up with some exercises or things like to show them. Yeah. So they, throughout the years, they build up this way of practicing, different ways of practicing, like practicing with patterns, practicing with slow practice. Many of them, like many people, generally think that practicing slow is boring, and it doesn't give you much. But I say, that's again back to my teacher, to Julia Gilginova. Practice when she practiced slow with me, after just 10 minutes of slow practice, I was exhausted. I was exhausted because she would be like a tiger for every little detail,
sound, right?
Every little sound, every little nuance.
I remember I had a couple of lessons with Sergio Fiorentino. I don't know if you know that pianist, Italian pianist. He died a few years ago, but he let me play the second ballad by Liszt so slow that, really kind of, you had to check on every single sound.
Exactly.
Every single sound had to be connected in a certain way with a certain dynamic, and not too loud and not too soft. And then, and that connecting a melody when you're playing very, very slow, it's very difficult, right? To make it sound like really kind of an entire sentence. It's a very difficult thing. So
the level of concentration required to play slow is amazing. It can't compare to anything else. So you have to really and you have to measure every note, every finger. It's very, very demanding, very tiring, but it's also very rewarding. So if you do it like that, then every piece you'll learn it really in depth, right? And so I tell them, we do a little bit of that. We do spot practicing, I tell them, don't play through. If you practice the piece a little bit, you already know where the hard spots are.
Right.
Open the book and go there. Sometimes I tell them, if you feel that it's because they open and start at the beginning every time. And if it's a piece that's more than 2 pages, it starts good and then it gets worse and worse and worse. And by the end, we're like in single notes. And I tell them, okay, you know that this happens. This happens because your brain gets tired. You start at the beginning every time, and when we make a mistake, you go back to the beginning. So the beginning gets played many times, and the more you go, it gets, maybe you played the beginning 20 times, and the end you played once. So what do you need to do? Well, I need to start at the end. Well, yeah. Did you do it? No, I didn't do it. So practice backwards. Start open in the last page and start from there and go backwards. It's something that's the thing is that our brains are we talked about that as well. Our brains are they're looking for patterns,
right?
And when they find a pattern, that for them is a sign to calm down. So the brain calms down and kind of doesn't drive the car. It's like on autopilot,
right? Yes.
And as soon as you introduce something that the brain hasn't done before, or in a different way, and the brain goes, "Oh, what's that?
Right.
Okay, what's it? Is that a danger? No, it's not. It's an instinct." And so the brain wakes up, and it increases your ability to learn and to remember things. So if you play a passage and you change it a little bit, for example, I'll give you an example. Let's say we have this passage that starts soft and has a bit of crescendo in the middle and has a diminuendo, and it starts piano and finishes diminuendo, and then suddenly loud. Okay? So I tell them, okay, let's play opposite dynamics. So if it says piano, you play loud. If it says go louder, you go softer. If it says go softer, go louder. And they're like, okay, well, and it's hard because you have to, and your brain goes on overdrive, but you kind of assimilate every little change. And when they go back and play the way it's written, suddenly the dynamics are bigger and they're more substantial, and you can hear them really, really well.
Yeah, so, as soon as we challenge ourselves a little bit.
So you have to challenge yourself.
Even if it's a little bit. Yes, just something new that you have really to pay attention to, and then there's just like you can go back, and then until that becomes something normal, right? Something that you know how to do, right? Yes. So how did you organize your lessons during the pandemic? Now, I know you said that you were teaching online mostly. What were the challenges in kind of online teaching?
Well, I find that the lessons teaching online piano, for many years before that, I thought, okay, I'm never going to do that because it's not going to be good. But then we were forced to do it, and I had to find a way to do it properly, so the students could have progress. And not less progress than normally.
Right.
So I find that teaching online is not worse or better than in person. Some things are harder. Some things are easier, and I find that it's just different.
Right.
And many people are not prepared to do, the things that you do to get lessons in person. Okay, you buy books, you get in the car, go to the teacher, go to the lesson, then the kid goes there and they listen, they play, they go back home, and they have to practice based on just this half hour that they had with the teacher. Now, online, first important thing is to have a good connection and good sound.
Right.
So the parents need to invest a little bit. It's not a big investment, but they need to have a good microphone, and even more importantly, they need to have a good internet connection.
Yeah.
Because it's lagging a little bit. You have to get used to the lagging, so you can't play it together with the student, but you can show them if you have good sound. I have amazing microphones here. I've invested lots of money. And good camera on my computer, and I have two cameras, one on top that shows the keyboard, one on the side, so I switch between those. I have good sound, and the other thing is I record all the lessons, so the student could watch, and this is like having a lesson all over again. They could watch it every day if they want, and it will remind them what I told them. Not many of them watch, unfortunately, but if they do, they'll make even bigger progress than in-person lessons.
Right. Yes.
So I find also, I also teach with headphones because I can hear every nuance. I watch very carefully fingers and stuff like that. One thing that's hard to do, obviously, is to point at the page and say, start from here. So I thought I had to teach all my students about bar numbers. And now I have 6 years old. They could count. I tell them, start from bar 17. And they're like, 17, and they start and they learn. That's another thing that you have to adjust, but I find that posture is another one that's get lost a little bit in online because you want to concentrate on the keyboard, on their fingers. So sometimes every few lessons, every like a month and a half, I tell them, pull the camera back. I want to see the whole you. How do you sit? How your feet and things like that. And if we have to correct something, we correct, and then we pull the camera back again. So you have to think about those things a little bit. But I would say that our students haven't slowed down because of the pandemic.
Yeah, right. So what I found a little bit difficult for me, as a teacher, was really kind of to get a grasp of, because I notice if they are having the weight on the keys, or kind of, by observing them, just like, if they are kind of relaxed, so the arm is relaxed, so the fingers are kind of, really walking on the keys. got a little bit lost online. That
Yes.
was something I couldn't really check. And when I went back to in-person lesson, I had just to work a little bit more, kind of, okay, just use a little bit more weight, your fingers, just try really to press a little bit better. But those are kind of, the advantages, disadvantages, in a kind of the online.
Yeah, that's why I listen with headphones. It helps if they have a good microphone, and you listen with good headphones, you can hear differences in sound, better differences in sound. And if you watch, you can see which ones are with the weight or not. But you're right, it's very hard to do. And I also asked them to do different things. Like if you ask them to do now put more weight, now put less weight, and they kind of find their own way of doing it, and they remember how to do it. And next time you ask them, they know. Right. So it's kind of, it takes time. It's when you're in person, it's very easy because you just demonstrate.
You
and
show,
they copy it,
or you touch the hand. You kind of, you just like take the hand, relax, fall on the key or something, right? But,
the posture is something that for younger students, I find, for very young students, you need help from the parents or siblings. They need to stand next to them and just,
somehow
do what you do.
Despite I really kind of from the beginning, I tell to the parents, they need a foot bench, they need to stay, the height of the elbow, and then the hand should be in this way, and they should, be at that distance, from the piano. I always find, when I teach online, that the students go closer to the piano, just like start playing like this, right? And then they're kind of hanging there with the feet, going somewhere, or kind of they're sitting too low, and then the hands are kind of hanging on the piano like that. And they don't get to somehow. It's difficult for them to really, for the parents as well at times, to really.
That's why I'm saying it's
understand the importance, right?
From time to time to tell them, put the camera back. And I need to see the whole of you, how you sit, what you sit on. But one other advantage, for example, is that you see them practicing on their own instruments. So you get an idea of later when you go in person, you will know, oh, this student has a good piano, so I can demand from them to play more nuances, or this student has a very bad electric keyboard. You're not going to ask them to do half pedal, right?
I notice a difference when a student has a Steinway at home, right? A grand piano Steinway that they can play beautifully, even on other pianos, right?
Exactly.
And when they have a keyboard, then you notice that they don't have a sense of weight for the fingers. They cannot, the technique doesn't prove that, quick and that's the importance of really having a good instrument, Tom. Sometimes they don't really kind of, they think it's just like a keyboard is enough. It's enough. If depending on what you want to do, of course, if you just want to play a few keys here and there, that's fine. But then if you really want to go into piano playing,
if you want to learn the classical pieces and properly, and not even professionally, but just like even as a hobby, you need a good instrument. The better instrument you have, the better you will learn. I have students who, I see this with adult students very much. I have a couple of adult students who are, all of them got, since they started with me, they got much better instruments because I always tell them, if you had a better instrument. So they got great instruments, and now I can talk to them about anything, any kind of phrasing, any kind of pedal, nuances, all of that details that make so enjoyable to play, like Chopin, play difficult pieces, play more advanced pieces.
I don't know about you, but I personally, those kind of small spinets that we have here in the States, that I'd never seen in Europe, those kind of small pianos.
Like boxes, no.
They don't really kind of exist. Well, So I if I try to practice on that, I would need at least to spend 2-3 hours on that piano to get used to the
it's frustrating. Keyboard. It's frustrating because it does not react at all. It just whatever you do, it sounds the same way.
Right.
I will sit down and I will sound the same way as a 10-year-old on that piano. So
almost
it will not be a difference. apart from the speed, right? But if
Yes.
if you play like a more elementary piece, we will sound exactly the same. But if we sit on a good piano, I will make a better sound, obviously,
Yeah.
and the student will have something to learn. In this instrument, you can't learn much. You're basically moving fingers, and it's some of them are even worse than keyboards.
Yeah,
there are keyboards that are not bad, but it's again, once we start again having the standard of the RCM here in Canada, is beneficial, because it as I said, you learn classical pieces, like the regular classical pieces, Baroque, classical, sonatinas, and you require a good instrument to do that. You require the proper instrument. Upright piano is fine. Even some of the basic Yamaha, Kawai, they have decent instruments. You can do with that for a long time. But keyboards, and also all those pianos that they give for free, piano for free. There's a reason this piano is for free. And it's very important. I've included that in my policies, although I don't enforce it strictly yet. But I've included that only for very beginners, for the first 6 months to a year, I would allow keyboard. And then once they get past a year, they need to have a piano. But most of my students have pianos, and I'm very happy with that. I'm very happy.
Yeah. But it is a problem a little bit, because if you really have a keyboard, you cannot go past a certain.
Yes, and the other thing is that if you get a better instrument, a better piano, it kind of holds its value in a way. It could go.
And then I know, I taught in Germany for many years, and I know that in the music school where I was teaching, we had keyboard classes, which were for keyboard players. And I know that my colleague who was teaching there had won a lot of awards for double keyboard playing or things like that. But his lessons were specifically for the keyboard, so they learned how to use all the all the different kind of features that the keyboard had, the rhythm, to combine them to the music, and the way of playing the keyboard was actually kind of different. The fingers would stay without weight on the keyboard, right? Instead of on the piano.
Of course.
So, and I think that's the right way to play a keyboard. So learn how to play the keyboard for the keyboard, and not to mistake that for the piano, because the piano is a different thing. I mean, we don't play the cello in the same way that we play violin. Why should we play the keyboard like the piano? No?
Yeah, of course.
It's basically the same thing, right?
I intend in the future, when we go back to hopefully to in-person lessons, I want to do a keyboard class, but I want to do something that's called keyboard orchestra. So basically, there will be kids who normally take normal piano lessons, but we'll get together once a week and we'll arrange. We'll put keyboards, but we will make them play different sounds, not only piano sounds, and we will arrange different pieces. And I've been in an ensemble like that in the past. It's called acoustic electroacoustic music ensemble or something like that. I forget. And we played, for example, the full score of Ravel's Bolero live. Everything was live, and we played with 4 keyboards and 3 or 4 other instruments. And you learn, because we played, for example, the Mozart's 40th Symphony. I played some of the strings that were assigned to me. Other people played other strings. And you learn interesting things like that, but that's a different thing from pretending that the keyboard is playing like
playing a Beethoven sonata on a keyboard.
Beethoven sonata on a keyboard. I'm not going to teach that. I'm not going to.
So, what are your projects for the future, Dimitar?
Well, I had a good fundraiser this autumn and winter. I'm doing something that's connected to piano. I'm doing 12 original compositions based on famous pieces for piano. So the way this is going to work is I have done few concerts that were I start playing Waldstein sonata, for example, and somewhere along the way I deviate from it. I start improvising based on the sonata, and becomes this improvisation based on the whole first movement, for example. And then I've done Bach preludes like that. I've done Debussy, Suite Bergamasque, a little bit like that. Other pieces like that. So based on those improvisations and more improvisations, I want to compose pieces.
I mean, some pianists do that, right? When you are in a live performance, you start a piece and then you start forgetting parts and you start improvising on the parts. I mean, some pianists do that naturally, right? Because you have to go.
That's unintentional. Yes,
that we know. Right? That's something else.
Yes,
but
but that's longer and more intentional. This what you're talking about is unintentional.
That's unintentional.
But but so I will end up with compositions based on iconic piano pieces. But for example, the Moonlight Sonata, the first movement, I would compose something that will have completely different harmony, maybe different melody, and like a piece, but similar. But and I call them departure points. So the original piece is the departure point, and from there, I improvise. Now, many people will say, "Well, who do you think you are? You can't improve on those pieces." Of course, I can't improve. They're genius pieces, right? I don't have any intention to improve on them. But for me, it's it has become quite the world of classical piano performance has become quite stale. And with all those competitions, it's kind of, I listened to the Chopin competition recently. And I heard many, I mean, the kids are amazing. They play amazing stuff. And at the end of the day, when the competition was over, I only remember one of them or two. All the others are kind of the same. They sound, they blur in the same. So we have less individualities. If you imagine in the past, we had, if you compare,
but you know what it is,
Benedetti Michelangeli to Richter or to Brendel,
different, right? You can
completely different. Completely even if you hear the same piece, completely different.
You nowadays, can hear, that's Michelangeli. That's the sound
exactly. The sound, even the sound, not even the. You don't even.
But
need to hear
the
the
problem
piece.
is that we are, the level is a little bit higher of all the pianists, right? So because of the possibilities, you have YouTube, you have all the recordings out there, all the video, all the masterclasses, everybody's available.
But
then you miss that kind of to step.
I hear great technical capabilities. But I don't hear much thinking. I don't hear individuality.
Right?
Just ideas. I don't hear ideas. And again, my teacher, coming back to her, said the 21st century will be the century best for pianists with ideas. Not all of that competitions and stuff like that will produce lots of pianists who play amazing, great technique, and then they fade away and you forget about them 2 years later.
I mean, if you think about how much work they put into really kind of preparing those pieces over and over and over again,
amazing.
I mean, it's a kind of an incredible amount of work. When I participated in international competition, it was like 9 hours,
10 hours a day.
Every day for months, right? So it's just a lot of work. And then if you see that, I mean, one will win, right? And then everybody else is out there with this amount of work.
Not always the best, because sometimes good artists don't do so well under great pressure. I mean, a little bit of pressure is okay, but this is the most pressure. I mean, it's like even a single mistake and they think, oh, I'm gone. And there are other things like many in many competitions you have to go beforehand, have a lesson with people of the jury, pay thousands of dollars so they know you. Now it's not that's what I hated. It's not corruption or anything, but it's they have to know you beforehand,
right? If I don't have the money to go to,
it's not fair. It's not fair.
Pianist X, or then I don't. I'm out of the network, right? Of,
exactly.
Now that I really want to mention things, but there is a famous academy in Italy where they, whoever wants to win competitions has to go. Right, sort of. And there's kind of an obligatory path to whoever wants to win a competition. I'm not saying that they do bad work in there, right? the practice.
There was another pianist that we all know his name. He was teaching in Germany, and he was the person to have a lesson with if you want to do any of the big competitions. He's not that
it's a good business
influential
for the pianist,
now,
I mean.
but he probably charges $1,000 for a lesson, he doesn't. He's not going to tell them much more than me and you. But
no, they don't tell much more.
That's how the system is set.
I remember a lesson I had with famous pianist, Italian pianist, a famous Italian pianist, and I was 15. I was playing Mephisto waltz, and the only thing he did was to sit at the piano next to me. I paid $150 for that lesson. For that, it was a master class, right? So sat on the piano next to me and played the piece. And that was his lesson. And I was like, why did I pay $150 for that? I could buy a recording for much less than that, right? So that was my thought. And then the second in the master class, my teacher was trying to kind of, push me to do it. And I said, there's no way that I'm going to pay that much money for this. I mean, it was probably stupid on my side, because obviously you go and take lesson with, that famous pianist, and you get some advantages, right? On the other hand, but I was like, I'm not that stupid to just not take lesson. I prefer to pay that same amount of money, for a lesson which is valuable to me, and I will learn.
Oh yeah, they're amazing teachers. I had one lesson like that in my life, where one lesson changed the way I play completely.
Yeah.
And that was with a Russian pianist in Cleveland. His name is, him. His name is Sergei Babayan.
Yeah.
He is absolutely like a fiery performer, and something that I like myself as a style. A friend of mine arranged for me to play for him. He had this academy, like a summer academy, where you can apply and go and work with him for, I think, for 2 weeks. Have a lesson every 2 days. You have a lesson with him, and you work on something, and you present at the end, like you play in a concert with all the other the other people. And the idea was for him to see if I can fit with that, if he can, again, like instead of applying blind, he could, I needed to see. I was at that point where I needed a bit of confirmation that I'm on the right track.
Right. Yes.
So I had this program ready, and I went and played for him. We were supposed to meet for 1 hour. It took 3 hours. He didn't. He didn't say. I didn't pay anything. He didn't ask for anything.
But I had the same experience with Sergio Fiorentino in Italy. I played really kind of literally I played, I think, the Mendelssohn Variation Sérieuse, and then I played the Liszt Ballade for him. It was 3 hours lessons. Didn't pay a dime for that, because it was an extra thing he was doing in his free time. So in his free time, he had fun, doing these things.
He just donated his time to me, and was the most amazing, lesson that I've had in a long, long time. And he said, okay, you have the talent and the ability to be my student, but you need to come to this academy first, so I can work with you in 2 weeks and see how fast you pick up. And unfortunately, I was a student in Dallas then. I didn't have. It was $1,500. I didn't have the money to, and I couldn't find it. I didn't know people to ask for sponsorship and stuff like that. I couldn't find it, and then it fell through. But it was the most amazing lesson. We worked on Beethoven sonatas. We worked on, I think, Fourth Ballade, Chopin, and stuff like that.
If you notice, those people, they give you this
inspiring,
really kind of feedback that is, really kind of for you. It's not the general thing, like, the Beethoven sonata has to be played this way, and then you have to do this, and you have to do it. It's just for you. Like, what can you do better in that? And they see that right away. So it's like a good teacher should just really kind of, I think, should just, listen to the student and say, okay, the student needs to work on the sound, on relaxing the shoulders, on connecting the melody better, on playing the accompaniment, all those small things. And then they see that and they tell you that, and then it's already better, because it's just the one thing that you were missing all the time, right?
Yes. Well, I had I had one lesson with him, and I'm completely ready to list him as one of my teachers.
Yeah.
To a point. That's how much influence
Yeah.
that I can say. Oh, okay, I had. I mean, I can't say I studied with him, but I had a lesson with him, and he's one of my
Right.
teachers. He is.
Yes.
He is. Really, he is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing musician, amazing person. Yeah. So you also come across those people. So I thought I'd mention it, since we talk about people charging a lot of money for lessons and not deservedly, but there are other people who completely, you're lucky to have them as teachers.
Yeah, I think the quality of the teacher, especially at the beginning, if it's a very, very good teacher, it makes a huge difference in everything, right? Because you have a professional really kind of taking care of you since the beginning and installing the right softwares in your mind, right? So that you kind of think in the right way. And I noticed when I take students that had those already started somewhere else, it's just, always like this a period in which I have to figure out, what
adjustment.
What
That's fine. Yeah.
Can I improve? Yes.
I also find that it takes adjustment, but it's I think students appreciate when you like what you do, when you do it with passion, and when you teach them something and makes them feel good to play it. That's the ultimate. Yeah.
Okay, Dimitar, thank you so much for your time
You're
and
welcome.
for being with us today. And
You're welcome.
So I will post the links to your YouTube channels and then to your websites below in the description.
Okay.
And whoever wants to subscribe to my channel, to his channel, or to follow Dimitar in his work, just please check the description. Thank you so much. And
you're welcome, and good luck with all you do. You're amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.